I grounded the halyard on Perch Hollow because the reactor coil gave out over the water, not because I meant to stay. That was 6 years before the soldiers came. 6 years is long enough for a stranded freighter captain to learn the tide tables, to learn which of the cliff fishermen would trade for engine parts, and to learn that the enormous tree at the edge of the village was not, by any measure I understood, only a tree. The locals called it the Hold. It stood on a shelf of rock above the harbor, older than the village houses stacked below it, its trunk wider than my ship's cargo hold, and split so many times that a person could walk into the gaps between its roots, and stand inside darkness that smelled of rain, and salt, and something else, something almost like breathing. The islanders said the Hold kept the voices of the dead in its grain, and that if you sat long enough among the roots you could feel your people move through you again, the way current moves through a hull. I did not believe that, not at first. I was a woman who fixed engines. Then I met Vess. She was small even for her kind, gray-skinned, going faintly green at the joints, with ears that came to soft points, and eyes too large and too dark for a face that young. I found her the first winter I was grounded, curled in the deepest split of the Hold's roots, alone, her mother 3 months buried in the ground below the tree. Nobody had come to claim her. The villagers left food at the root mouth and did not go closer, out of a respect I did not yet understand. I went closer because I did not know any better, and because she was cold, and because somebody has to be the one who goes closer. I did not adopt her the way you'd sign papers for a thing like that. I just kept coming back. I brought her tools to hold while I worked, taught her the names of gears, let her sleep in the halyard's crew bunk when the storms came off the water hard enough to shake the Hold's outer branches. She talked to the tree more than she talked to me, in a low clicking murmur I never learned to follow, her small gray hand pressed flat against the bark like she was checking a pulse. I asked her once what she heard in there. She said, "My mother is quiet today." That was all. I did not ask again. The village never made me sign anything either. There was no office for it, no magistrate, no ledger with her name and mine on the same line. What there was, instead, was a fisherman named Orsa who started leaving 2 extra fish on my step instead of 1, and an old woman who taught Vess to mend nets with fingers built for gripping wrenches instead, and a whole harbor's worth of people who simply began to say the 2 of us in the same breath without discussing when that had started. I got used to being looked at as half of something. I am not sure I ever deserved it, but I stopped arguing with it either. Vess grew the way children grow when nobody is measuring them against a clock. Sideways as much as up, quiet for weeks and then talking for hours about nothing at all, learning the names of every tool in my kit before she learned to swim. She was not soft. Her people did not raise soft children even in peacetime, and this had not been peacetime for her, not really, not since the ground closed over her mother. But she trusted easily, in the specific way of something that has already survived losing everything once, and decided the risk was worth taking again. She trusted me before I had done anything to earn it. I spent 5 years trying to catch up to that trust instead of the other way around. 5 years passed like that. Then the garrison ship came down out of a clear sky and did not ask anyone's permission. They wanted the shelf of rock the Hold stood on. Deep water approach, natural breakwater, high enough for a listening post that could watch the strait for 100 miles. Their engineer walked the site with a slate full of numbers and told the village council, not unkindly, that the tree would have to come down. 4 days, he said. 4 days to clear it and lay foundation. The council argued. The council always argues, and the garrison always wins, because the garrison has men with rifles standing behind their engineers and the council has fishing boats. I stood at the back of that meeting with grease still under my nails and said nothing, because I had learned by then that this was not my world to speak for. But I went home that night, home I called it, without noticing I had started to, and I found Vess sitting in the root mouth with her hand flat on the bark, and I understood that I was going to have to speak for something, whether it was my place or not. I told the garrison captain I had a salvage claim on the ridge, a lie mostly, built on 6 years of grounded ownership and a stubbornness he had no way to measure. He laughed at me the first time. He came back the second time with 4 soldiers and a demolition crew and considerably less patience. I want to say I had a plan. I did not have a plan. I had a freighter with a dead coil, a girl who would not leave the roots, and a decision that had made itself somewhere in the last 5 years without my permission. When the crew started running cutting cable up the trunk, I walked out and stood between the cable and the bark and told them the shelf was still under salvage claim, and they would cut it over my objection on record. It bought an hour. It was not going to buy 4 days. The captain, a tired man named Pharaoh who I think hated this posting as much as I hated watching it, told me, almost gently, that he had orders and I had none, and that I should get the child and get clear before the cable crew started for real. I went to get her. She would not come. She had both hands on the bark now, and her eyes had gone somewhere I could not follow, and when I pulled at her arm she made a sound I had never heard from her before. Not a child's sound at all, low and resonant, like something much larger speaking through a much smaller throat. I felt the ground under my boots shift, not violently, not like a quake, but like a held breath finally let go. Roots that had been still for longer than the village had existed moved, slow and enormous, under the packed earth. One of the demolition crew was standing on ground that was no longer ground. I saw it before he did, a root breaking the surface where his boot had been a half-second earlier, and I got a hand on his collar and hauled him backward off the shelf edge as the earth folded where he'd stood. He went down hard, cursing, alive. I did not go down as clean. My ankle caught wrong on the shifting root and I felt something in it give, and then the world tipped and I was on my back in the dirt with the trunk looming over me, and no clear idea whether I was about to be part of what came down. It was Vess's hand that found mine in the dark under the roots, small and gray and steady in a way 6 years old, or whatever her years were I never asked, had no right to be. She pulled, and something else pulled with her, roots curling low and gentle beneath my shoulders like a hand cupping something it did not want to drop, and I came up out of the broken ground with my ankle screaming, and my ribs bruised, and my life, as near as I could tell, entirely intact. Pharaoh called the crew back that hour. Officially, it was a structural hazard assessment. Unofficially, I think a man watching a tree move earth to save 2 people it had every reason to be indifferent to had learned something no slate full of numbers could argue with. The listening post went up eventually, half a mile down the coast, on ground that didn't argue back. The hold still stands on its shelf above the harbor. I still cannot walk fast on that ankle when the weather turns. Vess still sits some evenings with her hand flat against the bark, listening to a quiet I will never be let into. And some nights she takes my hand instead and presses it there too, like she's introducing me to someone. I don't hear voices in the grain. I don't need to. I know what held me up when the ground gave way, and I know whose hand it was that would not let go first. I never went looking for a daughter on this rock. I went looking for a working reactor coil, and stayed for a girl who talked to a tree. Some debts you don't pay back. You just stay grounded long enough to let them come due.